Every year in the United States, more than 200,000 women face a major life crisis during pregnancy. But how many of them get thrown out of their home the same night they inherit a technology powerful enough to change the nation's energy system? And here's a question even crazier. What would you do if the abandoned house from your childhood suddenly turned out to be the hiding place of a device that billion-dollar corporations, politicians, and even federal agencies would kill to possess? Tonight is the night Nora Lawson's life cracks open. Rain is pouring down in sheets, the kind that blinds you even from just a few feet away. And there she is, 32 years old, 7 months pregnant, standing on the marble doorstep of the Westwood estate as her mother-in-law's voice slices through the storm. Your child will always be family to us, Nora, but you are no longer welcome here. The heavy door slams shut, and just like that, Nora becomes both homeless and free, depending on how you look at it. Her husband, Evan Westwood, had died 4 months earlier in a car crash no one really talked about. The family grieved, but they also blamed. Some families heal together. The Westwoods, they built walls taller than their wealth. Sometimes what destroys a woman isn't tragedy. It's the quiet, polite cruelty that follows it. For weeks, Nora lived inside that mansion like a ghost, watched, judged, pitied. Eventually, the offer came. Financial support, a condo managed by the family trust, and full authority over the baby's future handed to the Westwoods. A gilded cage, plain and simple. So, Nora did the bravest thing a person can do when they've lost everything. She walked away. That night, she drove into the storm with nothing but a suitcase of wrinkled clothes, a torn wedding photo, and the promise whispered to her unborn child in the dark. I won't let anyone else decide who you become. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she headed toward the only place left. The Lawson homestead, a forgotten farmhouse her eccentric grandfather Jonas left behind when he died. She hadn't been there in years. People in town still whispered about Jonas Lawson, the inventor who disappeared for 3 years, then returned a different man, quiet, paranoid, brilliant, and very much afraid of something. The closer Nora drove, the more the night swallowed the road. Trees arched overhead like old guardians. The sign Lawson Homestead hung crooked, rust eating through the letters. The porch swing dangled by a single rope, swaying in the wind. Have you ever returned to a place so familiar it feels like your childhood, yet so different it sends a chill down your spine? Nora stepped out into the mud, breath fogging, water dripping from her hair. She knelt by the porch, lifted a stone, and there it was. The old metal house key her grandfather always kept hidden outside. Inside, the house smelled like dust, rain, and something strangely warm. Cinnamon, coffee, like Jonas had just stepped out for a moment. Her eyes drifted to the wall. The old pendulum clock hung silently, its hands frozen at 11:13 p.m. But in Jonas's death report, his time of death was recorded as 11:15, 2 missing minutes. A tiny detail, but one that would soon unravel everything she thought she knew. That night, wrapped in a worn blanket on the living room sofa, Nora felt both terrified and oddly safe. She didn't know it yet, but beneath her feet, under those creaking wooden boards, was a hidden world, a secret underground lab, a revolutionary clean energy breakthrough called the Helion Core, and a truth Jonas died protecting. She also didn't know that her unborn child was more than just family. She was the biological key to unlocking Jonas's greatest invention, But sometimes life holds the answers until the exact moment you're ready to face them. And for Nora Lawson, that moment begins now. In the next chapter, we'll follow Nora as she opens doors meant to stay shut, uncovers the truth behind her grandfather's disappearance, and comes face to face with a corporation powerful enough to rewrite the rules of the world. Before we go on, what would you do if you discovered something capable of powering cities or destroying them? Hold it. Destroy it? Share it? Keep that question close. It'll matter more than you think. And if you're ready to step deeper into Nora's story, drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, subscribe, and let's uncover the truth together, starting right now. They say the average American moves 11 times in a lifetime, but almost no one expects that one of those moves will happen in the middle of a thunderstorm, barefoot, pregnant, and unwanted. Yet, that's exactly how Nora Lawson's new life begins. One moment she's standing in the grand foyer of the Westwood estate, the chandelier glowing overhead like a frozen constellation. The next, she's staring at her mother-in-law across a gulf of grief, money, and unspoken accusation. Outside, the sky cracks open with a roar that rattles the windows, and then comes the sentence that will change everything. Your child will always be part of this family, but you, Nora, are no longer welcome here. It's astonishing how a single sentence, only 14 words, can erase years of shared dinners, family holidays, and promises whispered during wedding speeches. But that's the thing about certain families. They don't break apart slowly. They snap. The door slams behind her with a violence that almost feels personal. Rain splashes against her ankles as she steps down from the marble steps onto the flooded driveway, clutching a small suitcase filled with whatever she managed to grab, while being told through tightly clenched teeth that her presence was complicating the grieving process. Inside that suitcase is a torn ultrasound photo, 2 changes of clothes, and a half-folded letter from Evan, the husband she's still mourning, the man she married for love, not wealth. But in the Westwood narrative, grief doesn't make people softer. It sharpens them into shapes you don't recognize. Nora's 7-month belly tightens as she opens her car door, a reminder that life does not stop unfolding just because the world around her is collapsing. Thunder roars overhead as if the sky itself refuses to let her leave quietly. As she reverses down the long driveway, raindrops hammer the windshield so loudly she can barely hear her own thoughts, which may be a blessing, because the thoughts she does catch in flashes are all things she's not yet strong enough to face. What if I can't do this alone? What if they're right? What if leaving is the biggest mistake I'll ever make? But here's where reality mirrors the lives of so many Americans. Sometimes the moment you're forced out is the moment you finally see the door that was waiting for you all along. Nora has spent weeks living in a home so big it echoes, tiptoeing around emotional landmines, drowning in silence thicker than grief itself. And as anyone who's ever lived with tension knows, emotional exile can feel far colder than physical exile. When she hits the main road, the Westwood estate disappears in her rearview mirror, swallowed by darkness and rain. The house that once symbolized a future full of security now looks like a prison she didn't realize she was in until she walked out. That's the first quiet lesson of this part of her story. Not every place that offers protection is a safe place, and sometimes losing comfort is the only way to regain freedom. As she drives, her phone lights up with a missed call from Margaret Westwood, followed by a text that reads, "We will handle things from here." 4 words that make Nora press harder on the accelerator. Handle things, meaning the baby, her future, her identity as a mother. The idea that her child could become a chess piece in a family game she no longer understands terrifies her more than the storm raging outside. She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand, though she'll later tell herself it was rain, not tears, and takes the exit leading toward Ridge Valley, the rural area where she spent summers as a child. Her grandfather's old farm sits there, tucked beneath a canopy of maple trees, untouched for years. It's the only place left on the map that belongs entirely to her. She hasn't visited since his funeral, mostly because life moved too fast and grief demanded too much, and sometimes we avoid the places that hold the truths we're not ready to hear. The rain grows heavier as she approaches the narrow dirt road leading to the property. Her headlights catch the faded Lawson Homestead sign, its paint peeling from years of weather. The driveway is muddy, the porch light dead, the rocking chair on the front deck swaying in the wind like an empty cradle. Everything looks smaller than she remembers. Smaller, but strangely welcoming, as if the house recognizes her, even after all these years. She steps out into the storm, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the keys. And, although she doesn't know it yet, this return, this quiet, desperate moment on a rain-soaked porch will become the beginning of something much larger than an escape. It's the beginning of a mystery that will force her to question everything she thought she knew about her family, her future, and her place in the world. But for now, she's simply a woman seeking shelter, not knowing that the safest place she's ever known is sitting directly above a secret her grandfather died protecting. And this is where the next part of our journey begins. Inside the walls of that old farmhouse, where memories sleep lightly and the truth is waiting beneath the floorboards. Let's step inside. When Nora finally steps inside the Lawson homestead, the first thing she feels is the temperature. Cool, still, untouched. It's the kind of quiet you only find in houses that have learned to live without people for a long time. A thin layer of dust coats the wooden floorboards, but beneath that, the place carries the unmistakable warmth of something lived in, something loved. Her grandfather's old quilt still hangs on the back of the sofa, its navy triangles faded but intact, and the faint smell of cedar rises from the walls the moment she closes the door behind her. It's strange how certain scents can grab you by the heart more fiercely than any photograph. Studies show that smell is the strongest trigger of memory, and for Nora, that truth hits instantly. One breath, and suddenly she's 8 years old again, running barefoot across the porch while her grandfather, Jonas, calls her back for hot cocoa. One breath, and the storm outside feels far away. She flips the light switch. Nothing. The power must have been shut off years ago, but the moonlight slipping through the curtains gives her enough to navigate. She walks slowly, one hand on her belly, the other trailing along the walls as if greeting an old friend. The house hasn't changed much. Same wallpaper patterned with tiny blue flowers, same creaky hutch filled with mismatched ceramic mugs, same framed photo of Jonas holding a fish nearly as big as he was. Yet everything feels different too. She's not a child anymore. She's not visiting for summer break. She's returning as someone who has lost a husband, a home, and a future that used to feel certain. And maybe that's why the house feels bigger than before. Grief does that. It stretches spaces, magnifies silence, and makes familiar places feel like uncharted territory. She sets her suitcase down in the hallway and taps the thermostat out of habit. Of course, it doesn't turn on. She laughs softly at herself, a sound both weary and relieved, because there's something liberating about being somewhere no one expects anything from you. No judgment, no whispered conversations behind closed doors, just a house that stands quietly, offering shelter with no conditions attached. That's the quiet lesson hidden in this first moment. Sometimes the place that looks the smallest on a map is actually the one that gives you the most room to breathe. As Nora explores the kitchen, she notices tiny things her memory had tucked away. Jonas's handwriting on the inside of a cabinet door. Remember to smile today. The little wooden train set he carved for her sitting on top of the fridge. The dent in the countertop from when she dropped an entire jar of pickles as a kid and cried for an hour. These ordinary details, unchanged by time, remind her that even when life becomes overwhelming, there are anchors scattered throughout our past, moments that bring us back to ourselves. And sometimes, when the future feels impossible, you find strength by returning to the last place where you still felt whole. She moves to the living room and pauses when she sees it, the old pendulum clock on the wall. The same one she noticed earlier, its hands frozen at 11:13. The glass is cracked along the bottom edge like someone hit it or dropped it, but the clock hasn't been touched since Jonas passed. Nora lifts the pendulum with her finger, lets it go, and watches it sway once, twice, then stop completely, as if the house itself refuses to let time continue in the wrong direction. She feels a shiver that has nothing to do with the cold, and here is where the second quiet lesson sinks in. When something refuses to move the way it should, whether it's a clock, a relationship, or a truth you've tried to ignore, it usually means something beneath the surface has shifted, something waiting to be found. Just as Nora settles onto the sofa, wrapping herself in her grandfather's quilt, she hears the faint groan of the house adjusting to her presence. Old homes do that. They breathe, settle, remember. She pulls her phone from her pocket to check the time, but there's no service this deep into Ridge Valley. It's a small inconvenience, but one that brings an unexpected wave of relief. For the first time in months, she is unreachable. No Westwoods, no pressure, no expectations. Only the soft hum of rain against the window and the heartbeat of the child inside her. She places a hand on her belly and whispers, "We're safe." And even though she means it, there's a part of her that senses this safety will be temporary. Something about this house, its silence, its frozen clock, the way the storm seemed to guide her here, feels like the beginning of a revelation she's not yet ready to face. But that's the thing about coming home. You never truly know what's waiting for you until you open all the doors. And some of those doors have been closed for far longer than 5 years, which brings us to the next turning point of her story, because soon Nora won't be alone in this house. Someone unexpected is about to knock, someone who knows far more about Jonas Lawson than Nora ever imagined. And when that knock comes, everything will begin to unfold. The storm has quieted by morning, But the world outside Nora's window still looks washed in gray. Ridge Valley always had a way of waking up slowly, like the mountains wanted to keep everyone asleep a little longer. Nora stands at the kitchen sink, rinsing out one of Jonas's old mugs, when she hears it, the sound of footsteps on gravel, slow, hesitant, like someone trying not to intrude, but unable to stay away. When she peers through the window, she sees a woman in a rain jacket, holding a casserole dish covered with foil. And that's when Nora recognizes her, Marlene Brooks, Jonas's closest neighbor, a woman with the kind of steady presence that always made Nora feel safe as a child. Nora opens the door, and before she can even say hello, Marlene pulls her into a warm hug that smells like cinnamon and laundry detergent, the kind of hug that invites your heart to rest for the first time in months. "Honey, I heard a car late last night," Marlene says, stepping inside and wiping her boots. "I thought it couldn't be, but here you are." She sets the casserole on the counter, tapping the lid proudly. "Chicken and biscuits, the way your granddad liked. I figured you wouldn't have much in the fridge yet." Sometimes the first person to show up after your world falls apart isn't the one who caused the damage. It's the one who never expected anything from you to begin with. Nora explains everything in a few broken sentences. The storm, the Westwoods, the way she had nowhere else to go. Marlene listens the way only someone who's lived a long, complicated life can, without interrupting, without judging, just letting the silence soak up the pain. When Nora finishes, Marlene reaches across the kitchen table and squeezes her hand. "You did the right thing, sweetheart," she says softly. Sometimes family is not the people you're born into, but the people who know how to stand with you in the rain. They talk for a while, the kind of gentle catching up that feels like watering a plant you didn't realize was dying. But then Marlene glances toward the living room, toward the wall where the old clock hangs frozen at 11:13, and her expression shifts. Her voice lowers just slightly. "Nora, there's something you should know before you get too settled." The air changes. Even the house seems to listen. Marlene tells Nora that Jonas wasn't just a quiet inventor or a reclusive old man. For years after he returned from that mysterious 3-year disappearance, strange things began happening. Cars parked on the road at night, with the engines off. Men in suits walking the property line, never coming to the door, but always watching. Once, Marlene saw a drone hovering over the barn in the early morning light. This was years before drones were something people bought for fun. And twice, Jonas asked her to call him if she ever noticed a black SUV parked near the mailbox. Her voice trembles a little as she adds, "Your granddad was afraid, Nora. Not of dying. He was afraid of being found." The words settle into Nora like cold water. She wants to dismiss them, tell herself Jonas was just being paranoid, or that Marlene misunderstood, but deep down she feels that familiar tug. The clock on the wall, the house that still seems to hum with secrets, the uneasy feeling she had the moment she stepped back onto the property. Sometimes our bodies register the truth before our minds are willing to name it. Marlene reaches into her coat and pulls out a small envelope, yellowed at the corners. "He left this with me," she explains. "Said to give it to you the moment you set foot back on this land. He didn't say why, just said it was important." Inside the envelope is a single sheet of paper with a name written in Jonas's sharp, deliberate handwriting. Kenneth Doyle, attorney. Trust him. Nora folds the paper, feeling her pulse quicken. She isn't sure what this attorney has to do with anything, but she can sense the path ahead shifting, widening into something far more complicated than a simple escape from her in-laws. Marlene places a gentle hand on her shoulder before leaving. Whatever he left behind, Nora, he meant for you to find it. Just be careful, and don't open every door alone. When the screen door closes and Marlene disappears down the path, Nora stands in the kitchen with the weight of the envelope in her palm. For the first time since stepping back into this house, she doesn't just feel like someone returning to a childhood refuge. She feels like someone stepping into a story she didn't know belonged to her. And now, with her grandfather's warning in her pocket and 1,000 questions buzzing under her skin, she knows exactly what she has to do next. She must find attorney Kenneth Doyle, the man who may hold the first key to the truth Jonas Lawson died trying to protect. The next morning, Nora drives into town with the envelope tucked safely in her coat pocket, her pulse thudding in her ears like a quiet metronome, guiding her forward. Ridge Valley is small enough that most people know everyone else's errands by noon, but today the streets feel strangely anonymous, washed in winter light. The sign above Doyle and Hartman attorneys flickers once as she parks, like it recognizes her name before she even steps inside. Nora hesitates at the door, one hand lightly resting on her belly. It's a grounding gesture, something many expectant mothers do without thinking. But for her, it feels like a promise. Whatever this is, I'm doing it for both of us. Inside, the office smells like old books, pine cleaner, and coffee that's been reheated too many times. A receptionist, older and kind-eyed, leads her down the hall to a corner office where Kenneth Doyle rises from behind a tower of files. He looks exactly like the sort of man Jonas would trust. Steady posture, gray at the temples, a calmness in his expression that doesn't feel rehearsed. Nora Lawson, he says, as though he's been waiting years to say her name. Your grandfather told me to expect you. I just didn't think it would take this long. He gestures for her to sit. The moment she lowers herself into the chair, he reaches into a drawer and removes a heavy, fireproof envelope, sealed with wax. This, he says, sliding it toward her, is Jonas Lawson's private will, not the one filed with the county after his passing. This one was for you, and you alone. Sometimes the most important truths aren't the ones written for the world to see. They're the ones someone hides just deeply enough that only the right person will uncover them. Nora breaks the seal. Her hands tremble, not out of fear, but because the handwriting inside is unmistakably Jonas's, sharp, angular letters that always looked like a scientist signing his name on an invention instead of a grocery list. The letter begins simply, "If you're reading this, little star, it means the world has caught up to you sooner than I hoped." She has to blink several times before she can keep reading. The will reveals 3 things, each stranger and heavier than the last. First, Jonas left her the homestead, not just the house, but the land, the barn, the workshop, everything. The property was never part of the Lawson family division. It was legally insulated, protected from creditors, corporations, and outside claims. Nora tries to understand why he went to such lengths, but Kenneth gently taps the page. Keep reading. Second, Jonas mentions a project, something he spent years building in secret, a device, a breakthrough, something about sustainable energy beyond current federal classifications. The phrasing is vague, intentionally so, as if he knew others might one day try to interpret this letter without permission. He doesn't name it directly, but even Nora can sense the urgency behind the words. Jonas writes like a man who knew time was running out, not for himself, but for whatever he created. And then comes the third revelation, the one that makes her heart drop without warning. Only my bloodline can activate it. Her breath catches. She reads the sentence again and again. Kenneth watches her carefully. Your grandfather told me that sentence was the reason he kept everything hidden, he says gently. He believed someone was watching him, possibly several someones. Nora leans back, stunned by the implication. Whatever Jonas built, the world wanted it, badly enough that he spent the last years of his life preparing for this exact moment, badly enough that he believed protecting Nora was the only way to protect his work. Kenneth continues, Jonas also requested that if you ever returned to the homestead, especially under duress, I was to advise you of one more thing. He opens another folder, revealing documents stamped with agency seals she doesn't recognize, maps of the Lawson property, lists of materials Jonas ordered in bulk. Everything points to a truth she can't yet grasp fully. Jonas Lawson wasn't just tinkering. He was building something revolutionary. Nora doesn't speak for several moments. She's overwhelmed by grief, by fear, by the dawning understanding that the house she ran to for safety might be the most dangerous place she could be. And yet, she doesn't feel the urge to run. If anything, she feels something steadier rising inside her, a sense of responsibility, sharp and unexpected. Kenneth places the final document in front of her. A key. Old. Brass. Heavy. Jonas's initials carved into the bow. He told me you'd know where this goes, Kenneth says. And he told me to warn you. Once you open what this key unlocks, you can't close it again. Nora grips the key in her palm, its cold metal warming against her skin. She doesn't want this. She didn't ask for this. She came to Ridge Valley searching for refuge, not revelation. But life has a way of handing us the truth when we're finally strong enough to face it, even if we don't feel ready. She stands, one hand on her belly again. Kenneth walks her to the door. If you need anything, advice, protection, someone to talk to, call me. Your grandfather trusted very few people, but he trusted me to guide you. Back in her car, Nora sits for a long moment, staring at the key. The world outside the windshield feels too big, too loud, too full of possibilities she can't yet name. But one thing has become unmistakably clear. Whatever Jonas left beneath the Lawson homestead isn't just a legacy. It's a warning. And now, with the will in her bag and the key in her hand, she's heading back to the one place where the truth waits. Quiet, hidden, and ready to be found in the dark beneath the floorboards. Nora returns to the Lawson homestead with the brass key burning in her pocket like a secret trying to speak. The house is quieter than ever, as if holding its breath. She steps inside, closes the door, and the familiar creak of the hinges echoes across the empty rooms. Her shoes leave faint prints across the dusty floorboards as she moves toward the living room, the place where Jonas spent most of his time, the place where she always sensed something hidden beneath the routine of their summers together. She stands in front of the frozen clock again, its hands stuck at 11:13, and tries lifting the pendulum one more time. It swings once, twice, then stops. A chill spreads down her spine, not because the clock stops, but because of how deliberately It seems to stop, as if the house is hinting at where she should look next. She studies the wall behind the clock, runs her fingers along the wallpaper, presses lightly. Nothing moves. But then she notices the wooden floor directly beneath it. One board, slightly darker than the others, almost unnoticeable, unless you're searching with intention. She kneels, her back aching under the weight of pregnancy, and taps the board with her knuckles. It responds with a hollow thud. Her heartbeat quickens. Jonas was a man of secrets, but he was also a man of patterns. And one pattern he repeated often, half joking, half serious, was this: if you want to hide something from the world, hide it where the world never stoops to look. She slips the brass key into the thin slot along the edge of the board. It fits perfectly. With a gentle twist, the board lifts like a lid, revealing a recessed metal handle beneath. Nora grips it, pulls upward, and a square section of the floor opens with a deep groan of shifting wood. A draft of cold air rushes up, air from a place untouched for years, maybe longer. Her phone flashlight cuts through the darkness, revealing a wooden staircase descending into blackness. For a moment, she hesitates, unsure if she should venture down alone, but something inside her, courage, curiosity, destiny, pushes her forward. Every family has secrets, but only a few families bury theirs in a basement designed like a vault. The stairs creak under her weight, each step a whispered memory of Jonas's footsteps decades earlier. The air grows colder, thicker. When she reaches the bottom, her flashlight reveals a reinforced door bolted into a concrete wall, the kind of industrial-grade barrier you'd expect in a laboratory or a bank, not a rural farmhouse. It's built from steel, edges welded, the hinges thick enough to withstand a battering ram. In the center, a small brass lock waits. Jonas carved his initials here too. Her breath fogs in the air as she inserts the key. It turns with a soft click, and when she pulls the handle, the heavy door swings open with a hiss, like old machinery waking from sleep. Inside is a room Jonas built in absolute secrecy. Concrete floors, metal cabinets, shelves filled with scientific journals, old laptops, and sealed sample containers. The walls are lined with handwritten notes, equations, diagrams, sketches of what looks like an intricate cylindrical device, the Helion core, though she doesn't know that name yet. But what strikes her hardest isn't the science. It's the familiarity of Jonas's handwriting, looping across dozens of pages pinned to corkboards. The ink hasn't faded. His voice feels alive in every line. She moves toward a workstation, brushing dust from its surface. There, under a plastic cover, lies a metallic cylinder the size of a thermos. Lightweight, smooth, perfectly symmetrical. It hums faintly when she lifts it, a sound so subtle she wonders if it's her imagination. But the small LED display on its side flickers once, just once, as if recognizing her touch. The device shuts off immediately, but her heart doesn't. She sets it down carefully, palms trembling. This is no ordinary invention. Whatever Jonas was building, it involved energy, clean, renewable, potent. The kind of technology governments and corporations would kill to control. Suddenly Marlene's stories about strange cars and drones don't sound like paranoia at all. Jonas wasn't hiding from shadows. He was hiding from people. Nora begins scanning Jonas's notes. Activation requires genetic pairing, one page reads. Another diagram outlines how energy output is regulated through biometric signatures, and a final page, written in a hurried scrawl, states, If anything happens to me, Nora will know what to do. Only Nora. Her eyes sting with emotion. He always called her Little Star. Now she understands why. She wasn't just his granddaughter, she was his contingency plan, the insurance policy against a world he no longer trusted. She gathers a stack of notes and tucks the device into her coat. Careful, protective, instinctive. Suddenly, the lights in the room flicker dimly, not powered by electricity, but from the emergency battery Jonas installed. That tiny flicker, that moment of illumination, reveals something she hadn't seen earlier, a second vault door at the far end of the lab. Bigger, heavily reinforced, marked with a red warning stripe. And beneath the stripe, in Jonas's unmistakable block letters, "Do not open without cause." Nora swallows hard. There's a difference between seeking the truth and welcoming danger, and she can feel that line standing in front of her now. She doesn't touch the second vault. Not yet. Instead, she turns back toward the stairs, knowing she needs time, clarity, and help before she faces whatever lies behind that door. As she climbs back toward the light of the living room, key in hand, device tucked safely against her body, she hears the front porch creak above her. Not the house shifting, not the wind. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, intentional. Someone is outside the Lawson homestead. Back upstairs, the house feels different, charged, almost humming with an energy she can't explain. Nora moves to the kitchen table and spreads Jonas's notes across the wood like puzzle pieces waiting to be assembled. Outside, the footsteps she heard earlier are gone, swallowed by wind and distance, but her instincts remain alert. She locks the door, pulls the curtains closed, and returns to the strange metallic cylinder now resting in front of her. The device looks harmless, no more threatening than a high-end thermos, but the moment she lays her palm against its surface, the LED flickers again, faint, like a heartbeat waking from sleep. It's the second time the cylinder has responded to her touch. That realization sends a tremor through her. Machines don't just recognize people. Not like this. She flips through Jonas's diagrams, some of them covered in frantic handwriting, others neat and mathematical. One page shows an equation involving magnetic confinement fields and plasma stabilization, terms Nora remembers from the science fairs Jonas used to take her to, terms that normally belong in national labs, not in a basement under a farmhouse. The phrase localized fusion core appears 3 separate times, and beside it a line written with near parental urgency: clean power on a microscale, infinite potential, 0 emissions. Imagine a device the size of a lunchbox, powerful enough to light up cities or wipe them out, depending on who holds it. And Jonas built it alone. But then, on the opposite side of the page, another note stands in sharp red ink: unregulated application, more catastrophic risk. Nora presses her fingers to the words as if she could feel Jonas's fear lingering in the strokes of his pen. She imagines the implications. If the Helion core, as Jonas labeled it, falls into the wrong hands, it could be reverse engineered, weaponized, unleashed. A clean energy miracle could become the world's most efficient destructive tool. History is full of inventions created for good that were twisted for harm. Chemical fertilizers that became explosives. Medical radiation adapted into warfare. Jonas must have known that. He must have understood how narrow the line is between a breakthrough and a threat. Her breath quickens as she finds another page, one she nearly overlooks. It's less scientific, more philosophical, a kind of confession. Humanity is not ready. Governments will seize control. Corporations will corrupt it. But a single individual, guided by conscience, may protect it long enough for the world to evolve. He wasn't writing about himself. He was writing about her. As she reads, Nora feels a mix of awe and dread rise inside her. She came here looking for refuge, not responsibility. She wanted silence, not legacy. But the truth is undeniable. The Helian core activates only to her. Her bloodline and her unborn child. She is now the gatekeeper of something far bigger than survival. Nora closes her eyes for a moment, palm resting gently on her stomach. The child inside her shifts, a small movement that carries the weight of generations. Jonas didn't just hide this invention. He built it around a safeguard, a living key, a future, her future, their future. When she opens her eyes again, the kitchen looks less like an old farmhouse and more like the first command center of her new reality. She flips through another packet of papers, this one filled with maps, resource logs, timelines. Jonas tracked visitors to the property, unmarked vehicles, low-flying aircraft, men in suits who appeared more than once. On one sheet, he underlined a phrase, "They know." Her pulse jumps. Not suspected, not feared. They knew. Someone, maybe multiple groups, was aware of Jonas's work long before Nora knew it existed, which means someone may already know she has it now. She feels the air shift, thick with the knowledge that danger isn't abstract anymore. It's real, close, breathing down the back of her neck. She rereads the notation near a diagram of the core's energy output. Potential military range unknown. The kind of note that could turn curiosity into obsession for the wrong kind of power. Nora places every document back into the folder, carefully, yet urgently. Her mind begins spinning through possibilities, through threats, through choices she has no training to make. She's not a scientist. She's not a soldier. She's just a woman who wanted peace, not a Pandora's box. But here she is, holding the future in her hands. Outside, wind brushes against the side of the house. A branch taps against the window, rhythmic, like a coded warning. Nora rises from the table and takes the core with her to the living room. She stares at the floor, at the door to the underground vault beneath it, and realizes she's still only scratched the surface of Jonas's work. The second vault, bigger, sealed, marked with a warning, waits below. She doesn't know what's in it yet, but she understands one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever she uncovered today, that second vault is the reason her grandfather died. She feels it in her chest like a truth too heavy to ignore. And now, with the Helion core in her possession and the world outside already shifting, Nora must make a choice. Stay hidden and hope danger passes over her, or open the door Jonas begged her to avoid unless the stakes demanded it. As dusk settles over Ridge Valley, she knows the time for avoiding things is over, because someone, somewhere, has realized the Helion core has awakened. Night settles over Ridge Valley like a thick curtain, swallowing the last streaks of daylight behind the mountains. Nora sits in the living room, the Helion core tucked safely in a drawer beside her, Jonas's notes spread across the coffee table. Every creak of the old farmhouse feels amplified, every gust of wind like a whisper of warning. She's so focused on deciphering a line of equations that she almost misses it, the soft hum of an engine cutting out just beyond the tree line. Not the sound of a neighbor, not a delivery truck, something quieter, more deliberate. She freezes. Cars rarely travel this far down the dirt road, especially after dark. She stands, moving slowly to the window, careful not to let the boards groan beneath her feet. Through a crack in the curtain, she sees it, a matte black SUV parked beside the mailbox. No headlights, no running lights. The type of vehicle with tinted windows so dark you can't even imagine a face behind them. The type used by private security firms, government contractors, and corporations with budgets big enough to bury questions. The driver's door opens. A man steps out, tall, lean, wearing a jacket with no visible logo. He walks around to the back seat, opens the door, and another figure emerges. A woman, dressed in all black, hair pulled back tight, scanning the property with the calm precision of someone trained to observe before acting. And then Nora sees it, just barely. A patch on their jackets. 3 silver triangles forming a star. Astrodine. The name means nothing to most people, but it flashes through Jonas's notes like a shadow. A multi-billion-dollar energy conglomerate known for buying up smaller labs, absorbing patents, and neutralizing barriers to technological advancement. Jonas wrote the company name in the margin of a page more than once, always underlined. Once, he even wrote, "If they find the core, it's over. The moment you threaten the powerful, they don't retreat." They hunt. Nora steps away from the window, heart hammering. She grabs the core, stuffing it into her backpack and zipping the bag shut. Her hands shake violently. She expected interest, curiosity, maybe surveillance, but not an immediate arrival, not this level of force. Astrodine didn't come to ask questions. They came prepared. Outside, the woman radios something. The man nods and begins walking toward the farmhouse with a flashlight turned off. Another sign. They don't want to be noticed. They expect Nora to be asleep, vulnerable, alone. She steps onto the creaky floorboard at the exact wrong moment, and the sound echoes through the quiet house. She clamps a hand over her mouth, heart pounding. Down the hill, the flashlight snaps on, beam slicing through the trees directly toward the porch. Nora rushes toward the back of the house, her mind racing. She remembers Jonas telling her once, "If anyone ever comes uninvited, don't negotiate, don't argue, just run. Knowledge cannot be protected if you're captured." At the time, she thought he meant trespassing hunters. Now, the meaning is painfully clear. The back door leads into darkness, but she knows the path by memory. The old chicken coop, the rain barrel, the narrow foot trail that snakes behind the barn. She grabs her jacket and pulls up her hood, one hand protectively pressing against her belly as the baby shifts anxiously, responding to her fear. A lesson flickers through her mind with startling clarity. Sometimes, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to protect what matters, even when fear is the loudest thing in the room. She slips outside just as a hard knock reverberates through the front door. "Ms. Lawson," a voice calls, polite but cold. "We need to speak with you about your grandfather's research." Another knock, harder, a pause, then the low metallic rattle of someone testing the doorknob. Nora takes off into the night, boots sinking into the wet soil. She moves faster than she thought possible, adrenaline turning her fear into momentum. She ducks behind the barn, crouches low, and peers around the corner. 2 more Astrodine agents emerge from the SUV, carrying equipment cases. One unloads a portable signal jammer, the other sets up a scanner, its blue light sweeping the farmhouse, analyzing the structure. Nora gasps quietly. They're not just searching for her. They're searching for the core. In her backpack, the device seems to pulse with a soft vibration. Like it's aware of the danger, she presses the bag tighter to her chest. Up the hill, a crow suddenly takes flight, startled. The agents look up in unison, flashlights following the sound. Nora holds her breath until her lungs ache. She makes her way toward the tree line, slipping deeper into the woods until the farmhouse is barely visible through the branches. The cold air stings her face, but she pushes forward, guided by instinct and the faint glow of moonlight. Once she's far enough, she collapses against an old oak tree, tears spilling hot across her cheeks. This wasn't supposed to happen tonight. She thought she had time to understand the invention, to decide what it meant. But Astrodyne's arrival changes everything. They know where she is. They know she has the core. And they're not leaving empty-handed. Nora wipes her face, steadying her breath. In the distance, she sees flashlights sweeping through the windows, the agents forcing their way inside. She tightens the backpack straps across her shoulders, whispering to her unborn child, "I won't let them take this. I won't let them take you." Then she pushes off the tree and heads deeper into the forest, toward the only person Jonas ever told her to trust, Kenneth Doyle. Because now, this isn't just a mystery, it's a chase. Nora reaches Kenneth Doyle's office just before dawn, breathless, clothes damp from running through the forest, her backpack clutched like a lifeline. The town is still asleep, streetlights buzzing faintly in the cold morning air. Kenneth is already there, as if he knew she would come, standing at the window, coffee in hand, jaw tight. When he turns and sees her trembling, his expression shifts from concern to alarm. "You weren't followed?" he asks. She shakes her head, though she can't be entirely sure. He locks the door behind her anyway. She sets the backpack on his desk and whispers, "Astrodyne found the house." That sentence alone carries enough weight to change the temperature of the room. Kenneth sits heavily, leaning forward, fingers steepled. After a long moment, he mutters what feels like a confession. "We don't have much time. When danger knocks before help does, the only way to survive is to build an army faster than they can break down your door." Kenneth opens a drawer and pulls out a file Nora has never seen. Inside are photographs, grainy surveillance images, lab reports stamped with redacted sections, technical summaries signed by Jonas Lawson himself. Among the papers is a symbol, a circle split by a rising line, like a sun peeking over an edge. Beneath it, in Jonas's handwriting, are 3 words, the Horizon Circle. Kenneth explains that Jonas wasn't working alone, not entirely. He had quietly formed a network of engineers, scientists, whistleblowers, and former policy advisors, people who believed that sustainable breakthroughs shouldn't be buried by corporate greed or political agendas. These were experts who saw what Astrodyne had become, a conglomerate that bought ideas, bent ethics, and controlled more energy contracts than some governments. The Horizon Circle wasn't an organization in the traditional sense. It had no office, no public charter, no membership list. It was a shared belief, a loose alliance of brilliant minds connected by encrypted channels and a moral compass, people from different countries, different fields, all united by one simple idea: protect knowledge that could help humanity evolve and keep it out of the hands of those who would weaponize it. Kenneth pulls out a tablet, unlocking a secure message thread Jonas left behind. Dozens of names appear, aliases, numeric IDs, code names. Among them are 3 circled notes. Archive, Cipher, Lyra. Nora asks who they are. Kenneth hesitates, choosing his words carefully. Archive is a former MIT researcher who vanished from the public eye after exposing a major falsification scandal funded by, unsurprisingly, Astrodyne. Cipher is a cybersecurity ghost, so skilled that, according to rumor, he once shut down a Fortune 500 company's server farm for 3 minutes using nothing but a library Wi-Fi connection. And Lyra. Lyra is the one Jonas trusted most. A physicist who worked alongside him decades earlier, whose work was so revolutionary that it threatened multi-billion-dollar industries. She disappeared after a mysterious lab fire, something the media blamed on equipment malfunction, though insiders whispered it was sabotage. Kenneth says these 3 were Jonas's inner circle, the only ones who knew the Helion core existed even before Nora did. They had scattered after Jonas's death, each going underground for safety. But Jonas left instructions, knowing this day might come. Each one of them held a piece of the truth, a fragment of research, a key, a fail-safe. And now, Nora must bring them back together. She feels a wave of disbelief crash through her. She is pregnant, exhausted, grieving. She is not a strategist, not a scientist, not a hero. She doesn't belong in secret alliances or global stakes. But Kenneth looks at her with a steadiness that anchors her breath. Your grandfather believed you'd be the one to unite them, he says softly. Not because you wanted the responsibility, but because you'd carry it with compassion. That matters more than genius. Kenneth presses a button beneath his desk. The lights dim, and a hidden screen slides from the wall, forming a display of maps and encrypted communication channels. He says the circle has been dormant for nearly 5 years, but Jonas left a protocol to reawaken it. Called Dawn Sequence, it sends out a coded message to those still listening, a digital flare that signals the successor is ready. Nora hesitates. Once the signal goes out, Astrodyne will know too. The circle's activation will ripple across private networks, alerting anyone watching closely. But she already knows there's no way back. Astrodyne violated the boundary first. Hiding is no longer a strategy, only delaying the inevitable. She nods. Kenneth initiates the Dawn sequence. The screen floods with encrypted data, messages bouncing across continents, signals blinking to life after years of silence. A thrill of fear and hope twists through Nora's chest as icons begin appearing on the map, one in Boston, one in Montreal, one off-grid entirely. While the system runs, Kenneth turns to Nora. This isn't just about protecting the core, he says quietly. This is about choosing what kind of world your child will inherit. She looks down at her belly, the weight of that truth settling into her heartbeat. The core, the circle, the danger, none of it exists in isolation anymore. It all connects to one thing, her future, their future. Before she can speak, a new alert flashes on the screen, urgent red, cutting through the room. Kenneth stiffens. Astrodyne has intercepted something. Their internal surveillance networks have detected unusual data traffic, and they've traced the signature straight to Kenneth's office. The screen goes dark for a moment. Then a message appears, simple, cold, direct. We know. Nora's breath falters. There's no more time. The circle members are awakened. But Astrodine is already moving to shut them down. She must reach them before the corporation does. Kenneth grabs a folder, hands trembling slightly. "Go now," he urges. "I'll slow them down. You find Lyra first. Jonas said she's the only one capable of guiding you to the next vault." Nora grips her backpack straps, feeling the Helion core pulsing faintly inside as if responding to her fear. She doesn't know where this path leads. She only knows she has to take it. She steps toward the door, but not as the same woman who walked through it hours earlier. She leaves as the center of a rising alliance and the target of a rising war. Astrodine's fall doesn't begin with an explosion or a headline. It begins with silence, the kind that settles in the halls of a corporation right before the truth claws its way to the surface. Weeks have passed since Nora fled the homestead under the threat of Astrodine's agents. She's met Lyra, reconnected with the remaining members of the Horizon Circle, and pieced together the truth Jonas spent his life guarding. And now the Circle has something Astrodine never expected. Proof. Proof of illegal surveillance. Proof of stolen research. Proof of the corporation's intent to weaponize the Helion core and corner the global energy market. On a rainy Thursday morning, mirroring the storm that started this journey, Nora and Lyra arrive in Aurora City, Astrodine's headquarters, rising like a steel monolith above the skyline. It's not courage that brings them here. It's necessity. Because some battles don't wait for the right moment. Some battles come to claim you, whether you're ready or not. Inside the building, everything glitters. Glass floors, chrome railings, LED lights that hum like a promise of power. But beneath the surface is a machine fueled by secrecy and fear. Corporate analysts whisper whenever a door shuts too loudly. Employees stare into their screens with an intensity that comes not from ambition, but from knowing they're being watched. It's the perfect metaphor for Astrodine itself, polished on the outside, rotting on the inside. Empires don't fall because of one lie. They fall when every lie they buried claws its way back into the light. Nora walks beside Lyra, her steps slow but steady, her hand resting on her belly. She feels the baby shift again, gentle but firm, like a reminder that she's walking into danger for both of them. They reach the executive floor, where Marcus Vale, CEO of Astrodine, waits behind a desk made of black stone. He looks like the kind of man who believes the world revolves around his decisions. Sleek suit, perfect posture, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "Ms. Lawson," he says, his tone dripping with false sympathy, "we've been very concerned about you. Your grandfather left behind unfinished work that was always meant to serve a greater purpose." Nora meets his gaze without flinching. A greater purpose for who? The world or your shareholders? Lyra places a tablet on his desk. With a tap, the device displays encrypted files, emails between Astrodine executives discussing forced acquisition tactics, plans to replicate the Helion core using stolen data and experimental weaponization algorithms. It's damning. More than that, it's undeniable. Vale's jaw tightens. "You don't understand what you're playing with," he says. "The core is not a toy. Unregulated technology is a threat to global security." Lyra chuckles softly. "And regulated technology in your hands is supposed to be safer?" For the first time, the air in the room cracks. Vale stands, placing both hands on the desk. "We built infrastructure. We built networks. We built the framework for the future. Without Astrodine, the world collapses into chaos. Without our oversight, humanity destroys itself. Nora steps forward. My grandfather didn't build the core so you could decide who deserves power. He built it because he believed the world could be better if people, not corporations, had access to clean energy. Vale scoffs. People don't know what to do with power. That's why people like me exist. Suddenly, alarms erupt through the building. Shrill, mechanical, intentional. The Horizon Circle has triggered the release of Astrodyne's internal communications to global media. Every fraudulent contract, every illegal acquisition, every confidential weaponization memo is now streaming across news networks, journalists' inboxes, and federal oversight channels. The collapse has begun. Outside the office windows, Nora can already hear sirens, federal agents, investigators, protesters, gathering as information floods social media. Astrodyne's stock node drops in real time, numbers flashing red on Vale's holographic display. The company that once felt untouchable is unraveling faster than even the Circle predicted. Vale lunges toward the core, still tucked in Nora's backpack, but Lyra steps in front of her, blocking his path. It's over, Lyra says quietly. Power built on theft doesn't survive transparency. Vale's expression twists from arrogance to desperation. Do you have any idea what you've done? He shouts. You've doomed the future. Nora shakes her head. No, I'm giving it back. Security forces storm into the room. For a moment, time slows. The chaos, the shouting, the flash of badges, the weight of everything finally crashing down. Vale is pulled away from the desk, still shouting about his legacy, his vision, his supposed sacrifice. But the world outside the glass tower is celebrating its first breath of truth. Nora steps back beside Lyra, gripping her backpack, feeling the core's quiet hum through the fabric. She knows Astrodyne isn't the only threat. When a titan falls, smaller monsters always crawl from its shadow. But this is the first victory, the first crack in the wall that surrounded Jonas's work. Lyra turns to her and whispers, This isn't the end, not even close. We still need to protect the core. We still need to open the second vault. Nora nods, feeling the weight of her grandfather's legacy, the unborn child's future, the world's uncertain path. Astrodyne may be collapsing, but the real challenge lies ahead, because as the dust settles over a fallen empire, one truth becomes painfully clear. Destroying a threat is only the beginning. Understanding what comes after is the real test. The world doesn't change in an instant. It shifts quietly at first, like the slow brightening of a horizon before sunrise. And for Nora Lawson, standing at the edge of the Lawson homestead, weeks after Astrodyne's collapse, that new light feels both fragile and astonishing. The farmhouse, once a place of fear and unanswered questions, now hums with a different kind of energy. Not from the Helian core itself. It remains carefully contained, secured deep beneath the floorboards, but from the people who now walk through its doors, members of the Horizon Circle, journalists seeking truth, engineers offering frameworks for safe energy distribution, advocates who believe in Jonas's dream. Every day they come. Every day the world grows a little more open, but this chapter of her life begins with something much quieter, the birth of Nora's daughter. Under the soft glow of the hospital room lights, Nora holds her child for the first time. Tiny fingers curl against her palm, impossibly soft, impossibly small. Nora feels the weight of responsibility settle over her like a second heartbeat. This child, not the core, not the circle, not the legacy of corruption. This is the future she's been fighting for. Revolutions don't always start with fire. Sometimes they begin with a heartbeat small enough to fit in your hands. As news outlets continue reporting Astrodyne's downfall and lawmakers begin drafting accountability reforms, Nora's world shrinks to the gentle rhythm of feeding, holding, and soothing her daughter. Yet, even in the quiet, she feels her grandfather's presence, his dreams echoing softly through memory. Jonas never lived to see what the Corps could become, but he trusted that someone would carry the torch. And now Nora understands that his faith wasn't misplaced, not because she's brilliant or fearless, but because she's willing to choose integrity over power. While Nora recovers, the Horizon Circle works tirelessly. Lyra spearheads a coalition of scientists pushing for an international energy ethics board, one not owned by governments or corporations. Archive starts releasing Jonas's research in controlled phases, ensuring transparency without chaos. Cypher dismantles Astrodyne's backdoor networks, exposing hidden partnerships that once held global influence. Their collaboration is messy, imperfect, hopeful, a reminder that real change rarely looks cinematic. It looks like people trying, failing, trying again, and refusing to stop. Weeks later, Nora returns to the homestead with her daughter bundled close to her chest. The property feels softer now, less burdened by shadows. She walks to the barn, the entrance to the second vault, and whispers, "We're ready." Inside, Lyra waits with a lantern in hand. Together, they step down into the vault Jonas designed as a final message to the world. Unlike the cold sterility of the first vault, the second feels warm, almost human. Notebooks filled with sketches and hopes. Voice recordings Jonas made during midnight bursts of inspiration. Letters addressed not just to Nora, but to the people he imagined would one day continue his mission. An entire wall is covered in a mural Jonas painted, a sunrise breaking over a fractured earth. On the mural, he wrote, "A dawn that belongs to everyone, or it isn't a dawn at all." Nora feels tears spill down her cheeks. This vault isn't a blueprint for domination. It's a blueprint for collaboration. Jonas knew the Corps was powerful, maybe too powerful, for any single entity. So he built a structure around it, a vision for shared responsibility. Community power grids, transparent oversight, educational programs designed to teach, not hoard, knowledge. Lyra places a hand on Nora's shoulder. "Your grandfather didn't want followers," she says softly. "He wanted continuity." Over the next months, the Helion Initiative is born. Not an empire, not a corporation, a collective effort. Scientists, local communities, policymakers, and activists working together. Pilot towns begin receiving helium-powered microgrids. Rural hospitals stabilize using clean, sustainable energy sources. High schools introduce open science curriculum inspired by Jonas's philosophy. And for the first time in decades, national energy debates are not driven solely by profit, but by possibility. The world doesn't transform overnight. There are protests, disagreements, lobbyists who want to claim the narrative, countries that fear losing control. But the ripple has begun, and ripples have a way of becoming waves. People across the nation start demanding accountability, transparency, and fair access. They speak with the urgency of communities who've been overlooked for too long. One evening, Nora stands on the back porch of the homestead, rocking her daughter as fireflies blink across the field. The stars above look clearer, sharper, like the sky itself is breathing easier. She remembers The night she stood here terrified, carrying nothing but a backpack and a heartbeat full of fear. Now she carries something else. Purpose. Her daughter stirs, opening her eyes for a moment, gazing up at her mother with innocent curiosity. Nora whispers, "You'll grow up in a world Jonas dreamed of. Not perfect, but better. And still becoming." The camera would linger here if this were a film, mother and child, silhouetted against a sky that promises change. But life isn't a film, and Nora knows the work isn't done. New challenges will come. Greed will rise again, and the core will always need protection. Yet, for the first time, she feels prepared, not because she holds the core, but because she is no longer carrying it alone. The Hylian initiative belongs to all of them now. The Horizon Circle is no longer a secret alliance, but a global movement, and the world steps into a new dawn, not flawless, not certain, but undeniably brighter, as Nora whispers goodnight to her. Daughter, the final lesson of this journey settles like soft earth beneath her feet. The future is not built by the powerful, it's built by the courageous. One decision, one truth, one new dawn at a time. And that is the legacy of the Helion Core. Not a device, not a weapon, but a promise that even in the darkest night, there is always a horizon waiting to rise. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, let me know. Comment your thoughts. Share this journey and subscribe for the next chapter.